pumped with hormones, pumped with copious amounts of unsolicited advice, information, and pumping our tired titties like cows.
Pumped is a podcast that explores the fourth trimester and life thereafter, sharing every warrior woman's journey, from the hurdles of feeding to poop and pointy questions.
Join us for this wild ride of bleeding bums, burning nipples, and leaky bladders.
Hold on to your maxi pads, ladies. Evolve with us. Let's share it all. Before we begin, we acknowledge the traditional custodians and owners of the land, bodies, and airways we are recording from, Yuin country. In this episode, Pumped is also edited on Darawal land.
We want to preface this episode as it covers premature babies. So we want to flag this for any women who have experienced this. It may be helpful, it may be triggering, but ultimately this episode is going to be inspiring and uplifting. So, hello everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm not used to like being recorded whilst doing the recording. So
I know.
But looking very serious.
Very serious. So this is our first live Zoom video recording. So welcome to looking at our faces, putting the sound, the names to the faces. Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And before we introduce our fabulous guest, we're going to do our quick pump up and pump down. So I'll go first.
Okay, go for it.
All right. My pump up is for the week. I'm currently on the South Coast, and although it is heavily raining, I got to see all of my friends, which has been something that has been so nice to see all of my besties.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, and meet their babies. And it's pretty wild having like everyone on different sleeping patterns and everyone trying
nap schedules.
Yeah, you don't realize how challenging it is until you travel with a child and try and do things and all catch up for lunches and dinners and stuff when everyone has different routines. But ultimately, it's just nice to see everyone. So that's my pump up for the week. And my pump down is still that I'm yet to see my family. And I've had some really dark days with that. But we won't go into that.
I hope you can see them soon.
Yeah.
My pump up and pump down, they're going to just be so trivial. Pump up. Zali only woke up once last night. I'm freaking stoked.
That's a win.
Still so hard. It's a win for me. Yes. And because we had a period of like 5 to 6 times a night recently. So one time, amazing. Still can't get her to stay in her cot all night, but whatever. To me, that's a win. Pump down. I'm writing reports at work.
That is, I don't miss that. I do not.
No. And it's so hard because I feel like some of these classes, because I was on maternity leave and then they had remote learning and I wasn't part of that, I feel like some of them I'm only just getting to know, and I'm supposed to write a report for, the last 3 months of their schooling. So I'm feeling a little bit guilty about it, but I'm trying to be super nice, benefit of the doubt for this terrible year that they've had at school. Always
start with the positive and then just serve it. Yeah.
That's right. I'll be nice. I'll play the nice one. Anyway, that's all. But today, exciting times, we have Jessica Moore. She's a powerhouse. She's currently the head of strategy, SAP Success Factors at ANZ, and a qualified Gallup Coach. She's a highly motivated people professional with a range of experience across leadership, people technology projects, and risk management roles. Prior to SAP, Jess also worked for Maryvale as head of people systems for many years, lapping up all the Maryvale perks. How good. Dinner or drinks at all the venues was a fave pastime of hers and her girlfriends. That sounds fantastic. And Jess has recently relocated to the South Coast with her and her husband, who have started a horticulture-led plant nursery called Plant Culture. Awesome.
Very, very busy, yes.
Very busy.
It's definitely worth checking out on the way through Milton. I went yesterday and it's a beautiful shop, and Nick is such a character and always keen for a chat, even though he says he doesn't like people, he loves people.
Didn't I just meet him like 2 seconds ago?
He's like, hello.
Not shy.
No, he's not shy.
No.
Jess is also a mama to the beautiful, he's seriously the cutest baby. We walked through the street with him yesterday and there were all these mums going, oh my God, look at him. So to baby boy Franco, he had quite a wild start to life, but we'll let Jessie speak to that. And she's beauty and she's grace. She's Miss Jessica Moore. Always we call her like she's a celebrity by her full name. So welcome Jessica.
Oh, thanks for having me, girls. Yeah, great to be here virtually and in a separate room as well, physically and virtually together.
We're here together, but we're in separate rooms. Yes, it's very, very weird.
I've also got my French bulldog Basil here too, so hopefully he doesn't create a bit of havoc. But
that's okay. We like little extra guests on our podcast. They're always welcome.
Yeah, he's here. He's hanging out.
All right, to kick things off. So we know that you're now just over a year into your mum journey. So how's life going as a mum? Is it what you expected? Just tell us a little bit about how everything's going.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, look, I think Nick's the one that's a bit more, emotional and can imagine. He always talks about, Franco's exactly what I imagined him to be like and look like. And I'm like, far out. I'm like, how do you even have that level of imagination? But yeah, look, I always found it difficult to imagine what being a parent would be like and how I would react. And I didn't kind of put myself in the bag of not being very maternal. But yeah, it's been interesting, just the level of connection that you have with another little person and how different it is to when, it's your own baby. And I look at him sometimes, I'm like, wow, like as a human, it's so much responsibility. So I think it's just more for me, it really does go so quickly, and it has been a real joy. And I still think about, that commitment to work and being a working mum, but so comfortable equally just having time with him. And yeah, just overwhelming sense of commitment, I think I find has been like what parenting's been like for me. And just seeing his little personality start to come to life is pretty cool.
That's
so nice. And do you have, we always start with this, it's one of our openers. Do you have a classic mum story that you can share with us, something funny or that will give our audience a bit of a lull?
Yeah, I think I had to write a couple down because I'm like, I don't know how weird people's sense of humor is. I think everyone always has like a poo story, like, you drop a poo here and there and hope Basil doesn't eat it. Like, because my mum told me that when I grew up with dogs, a couple of the stuffies, they ate my poo. So I'm always on the lookout for my dog not eating Franco shit.
It's so funny.
But yeah, look, I don't know if I find myself very funny. Like Nick's kind of the funny one, but I think it was probably more the songs I gravitated towards when I would change Franco's nappy, because I didn't have a good grasp on any nursery songs. So like I just find myself singing like Barbie Girl or like, and then I just start singing songs like I'm a Barbie girl. I'm like, far out, this is so inappropriate.
Why am I singing this?
Like there's no real nice kind of take home message in this. Or was I singing Sexy Baby? Yeah, Sexy Baby. Drive me crazy. And they're like pumping his legs. Oh yeah. I'm like, if anyone ever kind of came in, they're like, wow, what's going on here? Yeah. But and actually, sorry, one other thing was, and look, this is probably more of a labour story, but we were so underprepared for labour that poor Nick was, and we did no courses. We saw a midwife once. Like thinking back when I was thinking back before that poor Nick had to Google like ideas on how to support me in labour. So he's there Googling next to me in bed. I'm like, I didn't realize he was doing it because I was so out of it, but I was just like, wow, okay, that's semi funny, but more like, funny. Oh my God, that's so tragic.
That is very funny.
Oh, the poor guy. Google. Yeah. I'm like, how to labour with your partner.
Thank God. His history would have been so good.
Oh, poor Nick.
Oh, so that's amazing.
Well, I'm already lolling way too much. So we do understand that Franco had a unique and challenging start to life, birth aside, but can you share your experience of the 4th trimester?
Yeah. My experience of the 4th trimester, not this jump past birth.
Actually, look, give us a little taste of the birth.
Give us some context.
Yeah, give us some context and then we'll jump into that.
Yeah. Because I was actually thinking about this because the 4th trimester could have started in, like, depends on where, you technically say it starts. But right. Yeah, no, so for Franco, like I had a really normal birth, COVID aside, or normal pregnancy, no risk factors, no gestational diabetes, no high blood pressure, really healthy otherwise. didn't have any, well, I had one check face-to-face with a midwife, and that was probably the shittiest part of my pregnancy experience. But I also was kind of in the bucket of the type of person that thought, you know, birth just happens or pregnancy just happens. Like I didn't do a significant amount of research. I had, I think I gave you the book, Hayley, Dummies.
Yes.
What is it? Pregnancy for Dummies.
Pregnancy for Dummies.
It's so good.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'll just skip past the premature section. Oh yeah, like I'm really healthy. Yeah, why would I ever experience something like that? But so where I found myself was about 29, 30 weeks. My waters broke. I thought I was walking around with lack of bladder control. It's another funny story. I thought I was pissing myself for 2 days. So I even managed to get a paddleboard in, probably to my own detriment. We found ourselves we were actually down the south coast. My waters broke, so we had to drive 3 hours back up to Sydney, which is a bit traumatic. That the whole way we were like, please don't go into spontaneous labour. So I was admitted to Randwick, spent about 7 nights there, just under observation, and randomly I didn't know that your waters can break and you can go almost to full term, which is 37 weeks they consider. But I only made it to around about 2 weeks, and then Franco was born at 31 weeks gestation. So that in itself was pretty traumatic. He spent 8 weeks in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. I wouldn't say that was the commencement of our 4th trimester, because even the nurses don't actually consider a baby to wake up. They refer to it, your baby wakes up, like and even in a normal birth experience, that after that kind of 38-week period they start to kind of change. I think it's a developmental thing. So that was, I guess, the cliff notes, very express version of my start to I guess pregnancy, birth, and Franco's entrance to the world.
Yeah, I did not know that about. I thought when your waters break, it's kind of like they only give you 24 hours or 48 hours. That's what I thought it was, and then you have to go to hospital and have the baby.
Yeah, so 80% of women will go into spontaneous labour within 48 hours of their waters breaking, but there's a whole, and it's obviously embryonic fluid. And I actually didn't know my waters had broke even when we were going to Sydney. I still it hadn't really struck me because the one of the doctors down the south coast, Micah, and I actually really appreciate her wording, just referred to it as your embryonic fluids leaking. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like leaking, I'm like, that could be okay. But I knew something was wrong when they said, oh, look, you can either drive or we can offer you an ambulance to Sydney. So I'm like, oh, okay. But there's a whole process that people can go through. Like I actually had to change my pad every 3 hours, monitor for infection. You can go up to, you can go for weeks, but apparently the water just fills back up and then comes out the leaking area. And obviously there's implications for the baby because there's a purpose behind embryonic fluid, but it's actually just the baby's waste. So for it to leak and fill back up is okay. They're okay with that. They just wouldn't let you go past 37 weeks.
Right. Wow. Learn something every day. I did not know that. How interesting. I didn't even know that it that filled back up again. Wow.
I remember seeing you, Jessie, when that had happened and you'd left the hospital, and Karen and I had come to visit, and I remember how tight your little belly was, and I think it was Nick's birthday, and we were like, we'll hang around for pizza, and I could just see the look on your face, and you were like,
oh, I was so anxious.
You need to go. And Karen and I were like, all right, let's get out of here. And then that next day you'd gone into labor.
Wow.
And look, it was signs of infection. They induced me. So I went through like all, the series of different things, I had Panadeine Fort, morphine, and I ended up with an epidural because again, maybe another funny story. I was there at the point I was hallucinating. Sorry, Hayes.
Oh my God.
Go.
I
know this. I was gonna just
I was seeing like blue. I think I was seeing bluebirds, but then it got to the point. I think I was in so much pain oh, look, you just don't know really, like at that point. But yeah, I opted for an epidural, and then, but you have to wait for the anaesthetist to come.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the anaesthetist's name was Shane. So they're like, Shane's coming soon. And every time my contraction would come on, I'd be there going, help. And then I'm going, Shane, Shane. And like Nick's got like a little cloth, like actually with the cloth on the head really
Well,
helps.
he saw that on Google.
Yeah, that was all. He's like wetting like the cloth, and then like Shane. I'm like poor, and like then Shane comes along, and then I don't know, the epidural relaxed me. They actually never checked if I was dilated. It was a really weird experience. I got really limited checks on that front, but yeah, about half an hour later he was born. So the epidural either speeded things up or he was just going to come.
And did they have to take him away pretty quickly, or how did that what happened when he came out after that?
Yeah. So I've actually got a photo of him on my chest, and they put them in a plastic bag. This is really weird. I thought it was weird. It's for heat and preservation, because they're obviously a low fat. So he was born at 1.5 kilos.
Oh my gosh, so small.
Yeah, but I actually was surprised when he came on my chest. I'm like, oh, he's bigger than I thought. So I was like, oh, I was really happy. And again, we had a tour of the NICU. We had some consultations before because we knew it was likely I'd go preterm. So the head of the NICU said that 30 plus weeks is really manageable, very positive. So I was going in, I guess, really optimistic. So they put a breathing device on him, and then Nick basically left, and they went to the NICU, and they have to, they stick so many different, is it catheter? Not catheter, that's through your...
like breathing tubes and things like that.
Oh, no, like lots of needles. Like, so he had antibiotics either side, and so he was jabbed left, right, and center. That was the main, I guess, one of the hardest things. But Nick went with him, and I was kind of left by myself after giving birth. So yeah, it was very, very strange, and but you're running on a high as well.
Yeah.
And then when he was, so how many weeks did you say he was in NICU for again?
He was in there for 8 and weeks. Basically the longest. We met the head pediatrician. So there's a lot of pediatricians that support Redrick Royal Hospital in the NICU, and he kind of given us I guess I don't think prognosis is not the right word, but a predicted time frame of a minimum of till he was considered full term, so 38 weeks, and it ended up being 8 weeks in the end, which was a really. And look, I just tried to keep a really positive mindset. There's so many stories that are attached to that. Poor woman in there was in there for 3 months, and she was like, 100 days. I'm up to my 100 days, and she was really intense as well. So, and that's the thing about being in the NICU, you actually don't get your own private space. So you are, despite the monitors and the beeping and depending on what level you're in, even the last level is meant to be quite a nice, very pro, let's get you to breastfeed, 48 hours of breastfeeding and then you're discharged. And that was always the goal. But you're in each other's space. It's really intense.
So intense. And then like the lights run all the time. It's just not it's all just lights and sounds and people everywhere. It would be really difficult. And there was even people that were going through domestic violence issues, and there was someone that was in there was abusing their partner. While I'm there, I'm trying in the corner trying to like breastfeed and hold my baby, and it was a really I guess it's a really sobering experience. Sounds like it very much. So how did you cope? Like, what did you have any strategies in place, like for your mental health at that time? That would have been hard. Because when you're a new mom and you just like flooded with all these different hormones, and I know I spent the first like 2 weeks crying. I had no idea what I was doing, but what did you do? Where did you go mentally to kind of stay afloat?
Look, I'm probably, look, lucky and unlucky. I think you know, your strengths are sometimes your biggest weaknesses. Like I am very, like, if I'm focused on a goal, like I'll fixate on that and I'll execute it and whatever. And not that my baby's a goal, but you know, there was, I took a lot of their advice on board and essentially just put a plan in place for me. Like the lactation specialist was like, you know, you have to pump 7 times a day if you want to breastfeed. When Franco's out, and you know, minimum 7 has to be between 12 and 3 a.m. as a must. You have to start today, as soon as I had Franco. So that was like one of the things. Okay, I'm like, okay, I'm focused on that.
Yeah.
And then and because of, you know, there is a little bit of a sense of progress with the way the babies move through the NICU, and so I just tried to focus on that. But yeah, look, I guess there was really, I've never felt such an overwhelming sense of almost grief as well. Like, you know, sitting on the couch at home without your baby, and you are going, and you have sweats in the middle of the night because you got hormone flushes, like, and just to be sitting up at 3 a.m, you know, upright by yourself, you know, obviously Nick's there, but yeah, it was
pumping.
Yeah, like I have to say, like I don't think I've ever felt the way I felt then, but mentally I'm quite focused. So yeah, it wasn't until the end that I was about to lose my shit, really, because like you know, there was little things where I'd walk in and you know, they'd say, for Franco to reserve his strength, we don't hold the baby quite a lot, and then I walk in and one of the nurses are holding him, and I'm like. And I remember in my head and saying to Nick, going, I was about to say, don't touch my fucking baby.
Yeah.
Sorry. But that's the stuff I was thinking about. And I'm like, you know, I'm doing my plan. Like, you need
because
to do
that wasn't
part.
part of, like, in your mind, you've gone, okay, this is what I need to do. So I understand, like, I'm going to go home and this is part of my everyday now. I'm pumping at this time, and this is all for that end goal of like being able to bring him home healthy and happy and to feed him. And then, that's not part of what you had seen. I would have been the same.
I've never, like, right to the end as well. And he had so many interventions. Again, it's you could talk just on the amount of tests. Like, he had a blood transfusion, you know, like there's a lot of stuff that went on. But yeah, so we had to progress. Breastfeeding was really hard though, as well, in that context.
Do you want to tell us about your feet? Because I guess you've kind of already touched on some of the strategies that helped navigate. And I know that it's a bit of a grey area with this idea of the 4th trimester. So I guess I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on in terms of before we dive into pumping, or do you want to talk about feeding journey? Because we know you've mentioned already that you had to pump 7 times a day. So you and Nick had this quite rigorous routine where, because of COVID, you were going, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were on different shifts as well. So how was that with your feeding journey and having to navigate those different shifts of, like, it was almost like different rosters that you had?
Yeah. So I guess, look, I think parenting's a roller coaster. And I had to get used to that early on. I'm like, what is going to surprise me? Like, especially in the NICU, like there's always, you think you're getting further, you think you're progressing, and then you get a really big knockback. And that's similar. I think that's probably, not to make breastfeeding sound a bit doom and gloom, or feeding in general, it can be a lot like that as well. So probably broken feeding, I guess, my breastfeeding journey down into a couple parts. So early on, NICU related, that went into 4th trimester, it was pretty much, pressure was on. You had to express a minimum, and I had to keep up with his increases as well, because he was through a feeding tube until he could start to get association with breastfeeding. And they don't get the suck, swallow, breathe until they're 34 weeks plus. So I knew, I had to do that. He had complications. He had to have formula at some point because he had high calcium. But I was able to get to a point where he was exclusively breast milk. Obviously, eventually Nick could help with a bottle, but you don't introduce a bottle because of nipple confusion too early. So I had to, and I mentioned before, you had to get that 48 hours of breastfeeding in order for them to get discharged. So I'm like, how am I going to be there for 48 hours straight? But it was just making sure that they were off the feeding tube. So look, that aside, when we got home, look, I I was really, and I thought I'd be a bit weirded out by breastfeeding. I was always like, previously, I'm like, having something on your nipple, it's a bit weird. I don't know why. And it's like your maternal instincts kick in. But yeah, I was lucky enough to breastfeed. And because he had high calcium, high vitamin D, you know, normal formula was never really an option for us, because it typically is quite high calcium, because it's not very common, I don't think, for babies to be low calcium. But yeah, no, we've had a bit of a, you know, unique experience when it comes to breastfeeding. After that 8 weeks, I was able to stop pumping, and mainly because I never really had an oversupply. So I just went to demand-based feeding and let him kind of lead where we wanted to take it. And as long as he was hitting his weight gains, even though he was still smaller, it was fine. And yeah, we've had, I guess, your boob enlargement, your mastitis. I've had a bit of everything, I think, as does everyone.
Joy.
But you have had a successful breastfeeding journey. I mean, you're still feeding Franco now, and he's just had his first birthday. So, I mean, that is, you know, you've overcome that. And I'm so proud of you, Jess. It's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I was really, again, laser focused, almost, you know, sometimes to your own detriment, when you have you've got this over enlarged boob. You're like, far out, what am I doing with my schedule around, you know, trying to breastfeed? So, because it's all about, you know, draining the boob and, you know, not actually doing this, you know, 15 minutes either side doesn't actually work for everyone unless you have a really quick let down and flow. And so it's trying to get to understand your body and then make sure that they're getting enough, which is always that tussle. I
think it's like really important for you then to kind of like block out the background noise, and you kind of figure it out yourself for you and your baby, because it is hard. I remember a similar thing, like you taking it, I had a really fast letdown, but then it was trying to navigate that. But then one person would tell me to do XYZ, and the next person would tell me to do this, and I'm like just taking her on and off and putting her here and there, and I was like, what am I doing? Until I just kind of worked it out. You got to figure it out for yourself.
Totally.
It's very confusing.
And there was even one time where I thought I had I've had mastitis, which is actually, it feels a lot different to an engorged boob. But there was one time where I thought I had a blocked milk duct, and I thought I had milk coming out my nipple, and it was actually skin. But before I realized it was skin, I pulled it out and I created my own cracked nipple. I'm like, I'm going to bleed. I'm going to the doctor. I'm like, I've got an engorged boob and a bleeding nipple. And she's like, just keep feeding on it. I'm like, cool.
But it really, really hurts.
So there was like 48 hours I was feeding on it. I'm like, got bleeding nipple. And but it does work. Look at that, you know, yes, it's hard. Yes, I guess you have to be focused on, you know, pushing through, but feeding through a lot of stuff is the best advice. And just trying to hand express. But and I bring that full circle. I'm pretty stoked that we're able to, considering his start in life and the immunological benefits of breast milk and in a COVID context and him being early. I'm pretty happy that we've been able to continue the way we have, which is really cool.
Well, all those nights up with definitely for something, then you can say. Totally. For sure. Well, so how old is Frank? Franco's just over 12 months, you said?
Yeah, so well, this is in I guess terms of birth date. So his birthday will always be the date he was actually born. In corrected terms, because they actually use corrected dates, so when he was due as a developmental milestone. So he wouldn't have been due until the 16th of December. So technically he's not yet there. And they use that because for the big things like sitting, walking, words.
So that's a good way for me to jump in with this question. So how are you finding that? Like, so you're always thinking about like his corrected date is December. So what are you finding that he is doing like in this period of time that's like new, and are you keeping track of that, or are you kind of just like letting it just happen and not focusing too much on what he should be doing or shouldn't be doing at this point in time?
Oh, I think if anyone says they don't fixate on what they should be doing, maybe they've had a few kids, so maybe they're up to their eights. Like my mum was one of 8. They're like, oh my god, the other ones look after the rest.
Yeah, whatever happens, will be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Oh shit, one's injured. Oh god. Look, definitely mindful, because we have some developmental checks with, and again, COVID throws a spanner in the works, which is sometimes good and bad, because I found COVID a little bit positive in the respect that it gives you a bit of time at home, but you miss some of those key appointments. Sorry, got my croaky voice. I don't know why.
Just partying last night. Were you?
Up all night.
All night.
Look, it is amazing. You think that they'll do nothing for a little while. And I was even talking to Hayley about meeting Jude, her little bub, and how they're, for lack of a better word, they're a bit spazzy when they're little, because they're like just flop around like this. And then you're like, oh my God, are they going to progress? Are they going to normalize their movements? Like, or, how does it all happen? Yeah. Because it is so hard to imagine their little funny little jerks become
turning into what we do.
Exactly. Yeah. And they perfect the squat and all those things, and you got to have that almost create space for risk and learning. So that's definitely the area that we're in at the moment. Like, how do we create that safe learning and positive experience for him to try new things without actually hurting himself? And that's where he's at. He's crawling, he's trying to stand, he's definitely got his words down pat, or at least trying to say things. Birds are one of those top things. And look, a Wonder Weeks app, I definitely use that as a reference point, but it kind of starts to get a little bit generic in that they're going to be grumpy or they're going to be happy.
You're like all the time.
And then a new skill does pop up though. It's amazing. It's like, they'll nail the crawl, and it's like, wow, where did that come from? And bouncing a ball or association with throwing something, or
seems like it happens overnight. They just a little switch flicks and then they're doing it. Well, that's good. So it's kind of like going with the flow, but also keeping track. I think that's just a good balance. Not being too stressed about it.
And there's hard milestones, which I think is really a nice way for pediatricians to put certain things, because if you focus on nothing but, and people like 3s, so that when the pediatrician said to me, so your hard milestones are sitting by 6 months, or thereabouts, walking by 18, 2 words by 2. So I'm like, okay, I can work with that. Like that gives me a bit more of a reassuring mindset.
And it's just a whole spectrum. I've talked to people who are like, oh yeah, my baby didn't crawl, walked first, and then started crawling after. You're like, okay.
But it's not a hard milestone. Crawling is not a hard milestone. So like, that's something that you can give yourself a bit of, slack on when people are like, are they crawling? Are they rolling? It's like, oh, I don't know. Are they meant to be? Or the question.
I know it's a loaded question, isn't it? It's those questions, and then are they sleeping through the night?
And the silent comparisons, like let's just every time, there's so many comparisons. Don't even get me started. I don't think anyone should compare their baby to anyone else's. No. There's just, every baby is unique. So
for sure. I agree.
So in terms of Jess, you've just kind of dove. You've dived. You're really back in the thick of work now. At SAP. SAP. SAP.
SAP just sounds like SAP. It's like a tree doing mucus.
Well, it works with your job.
But have you adjusted going back to work, and what are you doing with childcare options as well? What's the situation there?
So the adjustment back to work, I actually probably went back earlier than what I would have liked. And mainly because, look, just refinancing the home, we started a new business. So when you start a new business, you don't have a historical record, so you need to obviously have that wage. So, and look, I get paid really well, so that's also a motivator for returning. And the company was supportive of me working from home, because as you mentioned before, I've relocated to the South Coast. Previously based in Randwick, so And again, with this whole transition to hybrid work mode, and being part of a HR tech company, we've actually been really supportive of the transition or being open to those options. So I'm probably in the best position I would be in terms of options to return to work. So I've returned back 3 days working from home. My boss is actually based in Melbourne. So, and she's awesome. She had twins who also spent some time in intensive care way back when. So she really gets it. And I went back in August. So that would have been in roundabout corrected terms, he would have been about 8 months.
Yeah.
Thereabouts. When I went back, it was, I guess we had hoped that Nick, and because Nick, Nick was always really excited. He's like, oh yeah, I'll be a stay-at-home dad. And, but then you realize that how much, babies need their mums, and there's a real biological connection, and not to mention the fact that it's part of the female, I think, I don't know, anatomy or lack of a better word, that you are very instinctive with your ways of caring. And I actually just don't think that maybe it's certain guys, but no matter how much Nick said he would love to be a stay-at-home dad, I actually don't think during the period of when they're a baby, they actually can cope. You can see that there's a real kind of anxiety shift when they get stressed. So we tried a bit of care with Nick, but ultimately where we've landed is my mum takes care of Franco. Essentially for 3 days, we kind of have to look at options on a half day on a Tuesday. And we won't put Franco in care due to him being early until he's 2. But interesting fact, the pediatrician, again, because not everyone has options, the pediatrician said, look, I would give the same recommendation for any baby if they could be at home with, family, extended family as care. Before they're 2 is always the best option, but people don't have the luxury of choice. So that's kind of a bit of a summary of where we're at the moment.
Good. Cool. Seems it's all working. It is hard when you
depends what your definition of work. I'm working.
If you're working and he's still alive, it's all good.
Yeah, totally.
Still being fed, so it's all good.
Yeah, I know. Well, your threshold and your bar for success definitely has to lower a little bit.
Right. Totally. Well, I want to know because I don't know how it is when you are with Franco and you're feeding him, but I find, because you're still breastfeeding, so I find that like my daughter Zali knows that if she doesn't want to eat the solids that I'm giving her, that she's got the backup of the boob. But does he, in terms of eating solids, when he's like with your mum or whatever, is he a good eater, or is he a great eater all the time with you? Does he love his solids? Is he fussy? What's the go?
Yeah, look, Nick and I are really good eaters, so it probably helps that he is not. I don't think I've found a food that he's refused.
Amazing.
That's so good.
But it could be an age thing, and I'm also very much experiential, a little bit, not really free spirit, but experience the food. Like next minute he's painting with the pumpkin and it's all over the face, and I'm like, I just experience it, see what it feels like. That might help with him actually eating. So I'm not too strict, not too anal about things having to be really clean.
You just said the word anal, sorry.
Haley? What? That has don't worry, no connection to me at all. But I know there are two definitions of anal.
Yes.
I'm not too pedantic. Let's use another synonym.
Be safe around Haley. You can't use that.
About that stuff, and probably to my own detriment sometimes, but we've got Basil the vacuum cleaner, so he can come through and just lick things up. But yeah, look, it's about distraction, I found. So we're mindful to make sure Franco has enough nourishment because of his circumstances. But look, whether it's because he's preemie or because even genetically my dad's really lean, like he couldn't put on weight for the life of him. Franco is quite long and lean. And look, he seems to go through a lot of food. Like he'll go through 2 bananas a day. Like he'll eat a full,
They all love bananas, don't they?
Yeah. Well, it's a sweet thing.
Yeah.
Sweet and soft.
Yeah.
Sweet
yeah.
and
And it's just
mushy.
easy to, and I love that it's easy to carry around. Like, and we haven't, you know, I've used the Milk to Meals or Boob to Food book, which I found is really helpful just to kind of break down allergens.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, and just to give me one, because there's so many different references, and if you have, you know, something you want to validate, you just Google it. So can I give them this? And then you'll find a little article and you're like, yes, it says it's okay.
Yes.
But I would rather use one reference. So that's been helpful as well on what to give and what not to give. Like don't give honey until they're after 12 months.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, we try and give a lot of fresh fruit and veggies, and he seems to receive it really well.
That's great.
Which is
how good.
Yeah, for now. Yeah, look, I'm not going to jinx anything, you know.
Anything can happen. Yeah,
exactly. Like it's not a dream run by any means. Like I think it's just you just got to kind of work through the different stages that they go through. They start to.
Have you given him from that book? Have you ever given him bone marrow?
Yes, bone marrow.
I've never done it.
Oh, I've cooked my own bone marrow. I've got this turmeric and black pepper one. I do a little bit of that in some veggies.
I need to do that. My beautiful friend got me some, and I had it in my freezer, and then I never did it.
Why does it freak you out?
I don't know why.
One of his first foods I gave him, or like I probably gave him too much. I was like, I don't know. I'm a bit heavy-handed. I think I'm a bit forceful. My maternal instinct is like feed. I gave him liver. So I'm giving him liver, and it actually smells like dog food.
Oh,
it's really high in iron, isn't it? Iron,
yeah.
I'm Irish now. Am I?
Well, I've got a list today, so you know we can.
And he's like, I am an actor too. If anyone's listening,
I'll seed it in.
Anyway, how I know that I don't know, it's the first or second thing that you get in a mother's group, how's your baby sleeping? And I hate the question, but I actually am more interested in your sleep and how you cope, because obviously you've got from our previous discussion a co-sleeping arrangement. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And this is funny, like, you know, we talk about 4th trimester and, you know, the digestion of information, new baby, really high sense of, you know, I'm going to keep my baby safe, you know, almost overwhelming. I found that as one of the things that was quite interesting, this sense of, oh shit, you know, I've got a new human to look after, and you know, you look at red nose standards around co-sleeping or safe sleeping methods, and basically anyone you talk to that's had a baby before has been, I guess, putting their baby in what would be deemed unsafe sleeping standards. And I just found that to be, you know, almost not nurturing and unhelpful for new mums, because it was completely impractical. And I remember, I don't know if it was from the NICU or again, because you get CPR courses and different things, and you get so many different nurses you speak to. They all have like this different kind of thinking, and you gain a lot of knowledge, which was actually one of the bonuses of being in a hospital setting. You get to talk to so many different people about experiences, and in particular sleep. And basically it was jail bed, like, you know, your baby sleeps on a flat mattress, bars. That's the recommendation. But for us, I guess it got to about 4 months, and Franco went through a bit of a change in, I guess, the way in which he was waking more. The breastfeeding wasn't happening as regular or in the same kind of way throughout the night. And I remember going to the early childcare nurse, and you know, they're saying at about 3.5 months, you know, he's corrected 3.5 months. So it was probably about that 4-month stage that I tried the eat, play, sleep. And I remember the lady saying to me, oh, you should be trying to get into a routine of eat, play, sleep. And I'm like, okay, let's try the eat, play, sleep. Yeah. You know, coupled with the fact that I had to make sure he was gaining enough weight. So at the same time, I'd been to a developmental physio and the pediatrician in Randwick to say, look, he's probably not putting on enough weight, or he's kind of plateaued now. He
Mm.
hit the 4.5 months stage. So it's kind of all coupled together.
Mm.
So I'm trying this eat, play, sleep, and then also in the back of my head, am I feeding my baby enough?
Right.
And it just ended up not working.
Right.
And I went back to feeding him when he cried or when I felt like he needed it. And
Yeah.
that's kind of when we fell into as well a bit of him sleeping in the bed, because
Yeah.
I couldn't actually physically sit up anymore throughout the night because I was
Yeah.
getting really bad neck issues.
Right.
And then from 4.5 months onwards, and until this date, Franco's slept in our bed, and it's actually been really positive. I think, look, I like it, but I also feel like it is incredibly normal and natural, and he seems to thrive in the environment of having us both there. And
Yeah.
I don't know, he just wakes up happy, doesn't cry throughout the night. Sometimes he's whingy, and look, he honestly, I feed him to sleep, so he's probably building bad habits, but he seems to be a really happy and loving baby. So
look, if it works for you, it works. I mean, Charles always ends up in my bed too, and a pediatrician that I just found that I really love, who I felt was not judgmental at all, because I was waiting for the, like, you have to get her out of your bed because she's so booby obsessed. He was like, it works until it doesn't work for you.
Exactly.
So he's like, you just do whatever you need to do. And I was like, I really thought you were going to lecture me about, like, her having to be, you know, because her cot's still next to my bed, but I haven't even moved her into.
I should send a photo. Fine. We've never used the cot. Most expensive. Oh, that's the other thing. Like, you know, I just feel like, you know, talking about educating new mums, I think we should spend less time on all the things they need at their baby shower, because majority of it's marketing and fear-based, and actually, you know, exchange stories or, you know, food packages, or, you know, can I give you a cleaning voucher so that
nourishing,
when you need me?
Food and cleaning vouchers. Oh my God, they're like I reckon that the two things that stress you out the most, because you feel like they're the things that pull you away from being a mum, that you feel like you should be doing. I have a friend who's like, throw the cot out every time I talk about sleep and lack of sleep. She's like, just throw it out. She's got 3 kids. She's like, you're never going to use it.
I just there's a lot of waste.
We're in the market for a cot, because so I'll take one.
Well, I won't throw it out.
Well, I've got a brand new, beautiful. Well, it's not brand new. I bought it as because I was trying to be mindful of not buying whole heap of stuff, because I think that babies can be incredibly wasteful, as you know, as we are as humans. So I did try and I got the seconds, the model on the floor, but look,
which is perfectly fine.
I'm actually sitting in Franco's room at the moment, which is my office, so he's never had his own room.
Well, Sally has her own room. It's just a playroom.
Exactly.
I'm going to keep note of this time. Sorry, Hayes, we were going so well, and I didn't have to pause. But I'm just going to stop for it.
So, Jessie, on to kind of, we get this, we're just talking about this significant, well, we've talked about it in the past, the significant change that you get as a mother, these hormones, these new feelings about you want to protect your little one, overwhelm, but there's this shift as well that sometimes happens where you want to change the world for the better, or you have a career change, or there's this whole identity shift. Have you felt that, and do you want to speak about if you've had any of those shifts?
Yeah, look, I think I know a lot of mums who have shifted to a more creative space, probably due to the flexibility and the way in which you now need to work. And I could go into a whole different conversation, which we have a lot in a work context around women at work and diversity and part-time work. But I think for me personally, I'm definitely more receptive of not working full time as one. And I think that it's important not to put unrealistic expectations on yourself either. I could definitely say, oh yeah, I can give more to work, but do I want to? What's the detriment to Franco as a new little human who needs his parents? So and I read once, the best thing you can give a child is time. And, I'm definitely trying to keep that front and center. So time being that. What else has shifted for me? Look, I think slowly, but probably it's both an internal motivator and an external motivator based on where we're at right now from more an environmental and sustainable perspective. But I've definitely oh hey,
I'm so sorry.
No,
the little tornado is into the
Hello.
village. Can you take it for a second?
coming on camera.
This is mum life here. She's
Oh.
She's just
Oh,
come back
hello.
from the
Oh,
shop
she opened the door as well.
and I had shut the door.
That's all right. That's how
I'll
they
be
figured
out in
out
a sec.
handles.
I'm so sorry.
No, not at all. No, God, no. Yeah, look, and I think a lot of mums go through this, and I think it's actually because it is more a lot of chat. Like if we think globally, and again, probably not necessarily built on research, but anecdotally, a lot of change and community initiatives actually come from women because they have foresight or that connection to look their baby or their little person they brought into the world, that they want to make a better world for them. So
yes.
Yeah, I've recently joined a committee called Treading Lightly, which is a grassroots community and environmental based organisation, which my boss is actually really supportive of, because SAP have a direct alignment to, because they're a German based company as well, sustainable futures and how we can, I guess, be more progressive in that space. So I was already kind of heading in that direction, and I'd set myself some goals. I put on the, see them, visualize it. If you see them, you can visualize them, you can do them. So I did that last year, and it was move down the coast, have a baby, and become look after my health as well, become more environmentally focused and just aware of what I can do, which is really hard when you have a baby, because I've mentioned before, babies are really wasteful, so it's so hard to be sustainable. We do nappies, in reusable where we can, and all of that. But I think I have this strong connection to I need to find ways that I can make a difference, because, we look out at our front yard, and even you can see it in Franco, that, nature and that connection to, the elements and earth and is so much more nourishing and gives back so much more to them than, any toy can. And if you think of the basis of what good humans are built on, it is that sense of community connection and, getting out. I think there was a reference to getting out and screaming in the trees or the forest. Some people do it as therapy, where they go out and scream. And it's that, connection to earth and connection to trees that, and we feel it, I love going in the water, the salt water, for example. I just feel like we have this term, even Hayley and I have it, like, do you feel better? And like Kieran and Nick are like, Nick's like, I didn't feel bad. So I'm like, but you feel better, don't you? Like, tell me you feel better after being in the ocean.
He's like, I feel so good now. Fuck off, Hayley. Because every time he's like, I get in his face, I'm like, how do you feel? Cleansed? Yeah. Do you feel cleansed?
But yeah,
like, so all of that's just amplified for me, and I think just having a little person, you want to give them the best start at life in so many respects, and that has to come down to, if you appreciate something and it's at risk, or you want your person to be able to experience it, then do something about it.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking.
Love that response. Oh my gosh.
And is that what you do for you? Something that we ask our mums that too, like, what do you do for yourself? Is it the swim in the ocean?
I think it comes down to move, like just move, exercise, but it has to be, I try and find times where I don't have, like, I might go over to mum and dad's and try and get on the bike. And if I have to, mind Franco, then he wakes up. Like that's actually not, that doesn't fill my cup in that regard. It's definitely, I'll go run the stairs, or I'll get on the bike by myself, preferably. Because it's actually, I've always found, because I think that people do mindfulness in different ways, and I think being present and not thinking about other things is so important. And my mindfulness is definitely moving, but not thinking about anything but moving. So what I'm doing, and so that's definitely essential for me. If I get to a point where, like, Nick actually has the realization, is just like, you need to exercise. I'm actually and I'm sure everyone realizes this, when you're cranky or you're at your worst, you kind of lash out at others, or you know, you take that, you make negative assumptions about those around you. So
yes,
I think it's like it's mental health 101. If you're at your best, then you often assume the best from an intention from others. So I try and make sure that I keep myself accountable of, okay, if I exercise, I'm in a good headspace, I'm likely to give my best to others as well.
Oh God, hard relate.
Yes.
Oh my God, it's like yesterday, my day yesterday.
Freaking
and psycho bitch until I exercise, and then Zach was like, you go through many moods in a day, and I was like, I get it. Go Hayes.
If you had one piece of advice to Jess as a mum, and or if you could speak, say there's another mum that's listening, that's sitting here at the hospital, going through what you went through, what would you say to that mum? What would you tell her?
I think come through the judgment quickly, like, and the guilt, because I think if you can come through that quickly and just focus on, you know, giving your best to your baby and being your best, I think that you'll get through it. You will. There's no better way of putting it. It's a shit experience. Like, you get a new baby and you don't get to spend every day with them. And but yeah, guilt. I think that guilt and shame was something I felt really early on around not being able to, you know, give my baby the best start at life and you know, take him full term. And I think that, you know, we need to go through those emotions to come through to the next. But I think it's trying to just recognize that, accept it, and then think about, okay, if I've done what I've done, you know, I've done what I've done. I've accepted my headspace in that regard, and now I need to look at, you know, that next kind of, what emotion can I give to this today to give him the best chance, or her, or you know, gender neutral baby, whatever. No, sorry, no, we're not meant to label, which is actually really hard. As a side note, we always say baby boy, and I'm like, I wonder if we can be a bit more progressive and less male, female, or labeled. But look, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, the guilt and the shame. I think that, you know, I don't think you meet one mum that doesn't feel guilty about something, and I just don't feel like it serves you well to stay in that headspace.
Excellent advice. And 3 words that sum up motherhood for you.
Fierce protection, or almost that kind of instinctual. I know that's 3 words already, but I don't know one word that would sum up that feeling. Like, and it's just such it almost kind of overcomes you. It's definitely been a surprise. Just love, but with the asterisks of overwhelming. You know, you just look at your baby and you're like, oh shit. I'm like, you know, I get why people say my heart is out of my body, and I don't have a lot of really, you know, intense emotions often, but it's insane. And presence, like having presence, I think I know that's not necessarily a word to sum it up, but it's a word that I constantly remind myself, be present. Because you just see the connection that you get and how they react, and so being present is so important. It's something that I'm trying to constantly be.
And you sound like you got it together.
I know
you do.
You got to have the constant. This is the constant talk track.
Conversation with yourself.
Talk to yourself that you would like, in ways you want to talk to, you know, you'd expect to talk to others.
I've loved this.
What did you?
I said I've loved this. This has been great.
Oh, I thought you said I
pumped this. I thought you said I pumped this.
Because of the time, I thought you said I effed this up, and I was like, what did you? What do you mean?
No, I said I've loved this. It's very interesting. And I admire how strong you are.
She's you're gonna have
take a leaf out of your book.
Out
of your that's the saying, isn't it? Far out.
I always have a good chat with Jess when things aren't good, and she always offers a really good perspective, because let's face it, I get really overcome by emotions, as a lot of mums do. And speaking to Jess really is a sobering reality check. So I hope that other mums have experienced that just by listening today as well.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much, Jess.
No problems. It was lovely to chat. A little bit cathartic. I'd already been through. I'd kind of digested my story a couple of times, because sometimes you have to go through that to be able to articulate it in ways in which people can understand. But it's always, I think that is one of the pieces of advice you give. If you can share your story and talk to others, I think that's really important. It's quite healing.
Big time.
So nice to hear that. Well, thank you for listening, my dears and my gentlemen. I know that there are some dads listening. I've been told. So hello and thank you, and share the daddy love. Big daddies.
We love the dads.
We love the
daddies.
Dads, mums, everyone.
So give us a like, give us a follow, get onto Apple Podcasts and give us a rating and a review. We would love that. And we will be back to you very soon. And we all say together, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We say bye. Ready? And bye.
All right, I'm just going to stop the recording. Are you sure you want to stop recording?